Well, the 49ers are in the midst of their bird hunt. It's going quite well so far. We had the Philadelphia sandwich, which was a bird sandwich. You had the Seattle Seahawks. You had the Philadelphia Eagles. You had the Seattle Seahawks again. And now the 49ers move to the Arizona Cardinals, followed by the Baltimore Ravens. So the bird hunt is going on for two more games. And we're going to preview this Arizona Cardinals game next. And, the reason that I included the Ravens in the title and I want to look at the rest of the bird hunt as a whole is because I think that it might be smart to look at this as a two-game stretch, especially given the 49ers injury situation right now. I don't think they're going to be fully healthy for this game against the Arizona Cardinals. I don't think they need to be fully healthy to win on Sunday. There's going to be some pressure on depth pieces to perform. But the Baltimore Ravens are a whole lot better than the Arizona Cardinals. And we can visualize the test of the next two games here if we're going to view them in conjunction. Throughout all of this, though, I would like to say that the key is for the 49ers themselves, for the team, to take this one game at a time. We can analyze two games at a time, but the team, as far as game plans go, even if you're facing two straight mobile quarterbacks and Kyler Murray of the Cardinals and then Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens, you still have to put all of your attention on the task at hand. And the task at hand is this game against the Arizona Cardinals. Anyway, the bird hunt, this is what it looks like. First, you have the Arizona Cardinals, who are down here, bottom left quadrant team. So that means below average offense and below average defense. There's a reason these guys have only won 3 games. The 49ers, of course, they're way over here. They're an outlier. They're in a tier of their own. And I've filtered out garbage time in this chart. And that means that the 49ers have an entire tier in between them and everyone else. The second part of the bird hunt, at least the second part of the bird hunt yet to go, is against the Baltimore Ravens, who have an elite defense. And especially outside of garbage time, it has been playing really, really, really well. This is the only chart that I've seen all year that has the Cleveland Browns defense second to a team. So this is what I mean about Brock Purdy having a chance to make a great closing argument for MVP. He's going to be facing a great, great Baltimore defense in prime time on Monday Night Football. So the Ravens are a third-tier team, and we can count down to the Cardinals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th-tier team. The 49ers are playing a 7th-tier team in the Arizona Cardinals way down here before they play a third-tier team, but a contender from the AFC and the Ravens. So what you want to do and what you want to make sure you don't do is you don't want to look ahead to the Ravens because they're so much better than the Cardinals. First, you got to take care of the Cardinals, but since seasons are these large, living, breathing things that obviously we'll see carryover from one game to the other, at least in terms of the injury report, I think the 49ers do have to consider the big picture as far as who's going to play, and they have to evaluate who's going to be healthy enough to play. The injury report right now, the prominent names on it are Charvarius Ward, the cornerback, the 49ers' top corner, Javon Hargrave, one of their top defensive tackles, Eric Armstead, their other top defensive tackle, Dre Greenlaw, their second linebacker. He's got a hip injury. This is the longest that the injury report has been all season. Now, the names that I just listed, they're on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, the starting right guard, Spencer Burford, missed practice today, but he was working off on the side in uniform, and he had his helmet on. So I think Burford's got a shot to go on Sunday, but the point still stands. Most of the 49ers defense, or most of the 49ers offense, is in place right now and healthy, and it's the defense, especially the interior defensive line, that is struggling through a few injuries. And I have to say that when we identify the weaknesses and the strengths of the Arizona Cardinals, who have only won 3 games, to say this: Kyler Murray is back, but he hasn't been very good. He's been back for about 4 games, and the Cardinals have gone 2-2 over the course of those 4 after starting the season 1-8. But as far as drop back EPA, Kyler Murray is ranked number 25 in the NFL. That isn't good. And on the other side of the ball, the Cardinals defense was terrible to begin the year. They didn't have Budda Baker when the 49ers lit them up back in week 4. He's off of IR now, and the Cardinals have improved marginally over the course of the past 4 weeks, ever since the bye, since they got Kyler Murray back on the other side, but they're still ranked about number 25 in EPA per play on defense. They're bad against the run. They're bad against the pass. There are not a lot of superstars on this defense. So the 49ers have a big advantage on paper. And again, we can illustrate that advantage through this first-tier team against a seventh-tier team. And when you get that kind of pairing, you get a 13.5-point spread. And when that happens, you start talking about the Ravens coming up after the Cardinals, and you have to remind the 49ers, take this one game at a time. Their game prep focus has to be centered around that because the NFL is a week-to-week league. But we can sit here and we can talk about the 49ers trying to heal up before they play Baltimore because that's the obvious overarching context behind all of this. The thing is, you might have to win out to get that number one seed if you're the 49ers. You are in the driver's seat now. You do control your own destiny. But when you look at the Eagles schedule, I know they have the Seahawks next on Monday Night Football. So there's a chance that goes Seattle's way, especially since it's up in the Pacific Northwest. But especially after this game, I think the schedule eases off considerably for Philadelphia. The 49ers still have that Ravens game, and obviously they have this game on the road against the Cardinals. They've beaten Dallas, Arizona has. So you've got to make sure that you keep your foot on the gas if you're San Francisco. Speaking of the Cowboys, their schedule just gets tougher now. The Cowboys are going to have to play the Buffalo Bills. They're going to have to play the Miami Dolphins. So when we talk about the Brock Purdy MVP talk, well, I think that he has a good setup here to make a good final statement. And the closing argument might come on December 25th against the Ravens. Speaking of Purdy against the Cardinals back in week 4, that's when he made NFL or 49ers franchise history. 21 out of 22. That's 95.4% in the completion rate column. And with that 95.4%, Brock Purdy surpassed both Joe Montana and Steve Young for the top single game mark in 49ers history. The only positive play for the Arizona defense was the Dennis Gardeck play. Outside linebacker, pass rusher. He beat Colton McKivitz. And because of that, Brock Purdy had to throw the ball away. It was an incomplete pass. It wasn't really a throwaway. It was just a throw that wasn't on target for a completion because there was one win along the line of scrimmage in the third quarter from the Arizona Cardinals. So remember that play. It was the only thing that stopped the 49ers from being perfect. One of the storylines this week is mobile QB mania. I know Kyler Murray is back. Hasn't been nearly as impressive as I don't ever think that Kyler Murray got very efficient in the NFL. It seemed like he peaked around number 15 or number 14. So, but he hadn't been back at that level since the return from his ACL injury, and it's been 4 games. Now, Arizona's won 2 of them. They beat the Steelers 24-10. And the Steelers have a good defense. They've got some good edge rushers, but I think a lot of that victory for Arizona was Mitch Trubisky being the quarterback on the other side following the injury to Kenny Pickett. Trubisky's been terrible. I mean, they even failed to beat the woeful New England Patriots. So we'll see. We're going to have to watch how this develops. The 49ers, though, I think have a good, big advantage on paper. And when I talk about the mobile QB mania, that's what I have written underneath me. I think that one of the storylines this week is going to revolve around Kyler Murray being a running quarterback, the 49ers playing good defense against the running quarterback against the Philadelphia Eagles a couple weeks ago. They've got Murray, and then they have Lamar Jackson on deck. Will the 49ers be able to set some sort of defensive table for what they do on Monday night? And the question is, maybe on a very basic level, yes. But Lamar and Kyler are different types of players, just like Kyler is a different player like Jalen Hurts. And, it's one of those situations where you cannot put all the mobile quarterbacks in the same bucket because some are going to have strengths that others don't have as far as operating from the pocket. Some will be a little bit faster than others scrambling wise. Some are taller than others. 49ers facing one of the shorter QBs this time around. So maybe tangentially it will help them get ready for Lamar Jackson. But again, I remind you, one day at a time. How about this? Nuanced excellence from Brock Purdy. We had Kyle Shanahan with a hell of a quote, and we also had Kyle Shanahan with a press conference video that I'm going to pull up for you guys right now. Kyle Shanahan talking about the little small things that have made Brock Purdy into the QB that he is, and that is the QB at the very top of the league metrics. Hear out Kyle Shanahan right now.
I think it was to Debo, where he noticed that the safety was flat-footed. Like, how next level is that? At what point in the quarterback's NFL development is he not just looking at a blurry picture and he can actually see a guy's feet?
I mean, I think that's stuff that he does I think that's the talent of Brock that you can't always judge. Like, I think vision and stuff is very important and doesn't just go into like, is he 20/20? Like, there's different types of vision of like looking outside wide, coming in, like just the words I never know. But it's a big deal how your eyes see things. And I think Brock recognizes stuff and the speed of things and levels, and he knows the whole and the defenders and what they should defend, but it's always like there's a progression. It's like, yeah, this play is going to go to here, but that guy might not do his job. And so you got to feel that. Make sure if he does his job, we're going to number 2. That's what he usually does. And Brock went to number 1, which hadn't been there on tape, but he wasn't backing up, and we had a fast guy in the slot, and you better back up. And he hesitated a little bit, and Brock saw that, and so he doesn't memorize and guess. He kind of sees it and reacts, and that's the coolest thing about him.
The defensive guy, like, you draw it up, and hey, if the defense is played soundly, this is what this guy should do. But there are times where it makes it more difficult on the offense because the defense isn't doing.
Well, that's how everything. There's always progression, but you might call a play where this guy's number 1 in the progression, but the coverage that they play, he's never open. So you should see he's covered, and that means number 2 is open. But if you get that coverage and you just go right to number 2. And he's covered, you can't go back to number 1. So you got to verify things. And so you find, I mean, if I got in there and played quarterback, I wouldn't know anything that's going on. I'd memorize coverages, and I would try to program before and be like, all right, I think it's this. Let me go to number 3. And then you get fooled. And once you try to come back to number 1, you're throwing picks or getting sacked. So it's knowing what's going on, but also still playing the game and trying not to get overwhelmed with coach talk or a film and all that. You got to be in a pocket and read things and react, and that's why it's really tough to play the position.
I think Kyle Shanahan did a really good job there illustrating how difficult it is to play quarterback. And I think one of the inherent issues with the underappreciation of Brock Purdy in some corners of the internet and some corners of the football world comes from the fact that people don't understand what it actually takes to be an elite quarterback. They think it means running fast and throwing far, and that's not the case. It's about sitting there in the pocket and reading very complex things in a very stressful situation. 280-pound edge rushers throwing their body around, trying to sack you, bodies flying everywhere. Obviously, some pain involved if you do get hit. And then you have very, very fast players on the back end covering. Holes are tiny, and they'll close very quickly. So the throwing lanes are not easy to find. And on top of that, you're managing a complex playbook with many different variations, different route combinations against different defenses. It's not like it's just one defense that you're facing on every single snap. You've got to be able to read, recognize, and react if you're an NFL quarterback, and you have to be able to do that from the confines of the pocket. That is the skill, and that's what Brock Purdy has done at the highest level in the world this year, at the highest level in the NFL. I've mentioned this many times, but when we look at something like adjusted net yards per attempt, Brock Purdy is third only to prime Peyton Manning and prime Aaron Rodgers, 2004 and 2011, respectively, in that statistic over the course of this season. You don't get that efficient in a statistic that includes, obviously, yardage, but all of it, also touchdowns, also interceptions, also sack yardage. You don't get that efficient in the statistic that is most correlated with the NFL MVP award unless you are doing a lot right. And speaking of doing a lot right, how about both Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey co-MVP award? The reason I bring it up is because Kyle Shanahan was asked about McCaffrey or Purdy for MVP, and you could take a look at his answer. Quote, I mean, are you trying to get me in trouble with those two guys? That's the only reason I wouldn't overly comment on either one of them, because I don't want them to cancel each other out. But if any non-quarterback's going to get an MVP, I don't get how Christian McCaffrey can't. I mean, he's amazing in what he has done all year. But if it's going to be a quarterback, then I don't have to talk about Christian. I can talk about our quarterback, and that's Brock Purdy. If his numbers is all you see, then I think that solves it up. But if you watch the film, then it makes it even stronger, which to me is the most important thing. You know, I just thought it was interesting that Kyle Shanahan said if you look at the numbers for Brock Purdy, it settles it. He is the MVP favorite. Look, even this guy, Steven Ruiz, who obviously hasn't been very complimentary of Brock Purdy this year. He's the guy that's put him down in the bottom tier of quarterbacks. It feels like even he is coming around. Look, there are 8 NFL quarterbacks averaging a positive EPA, expected points added, when throwing into tight coverage. So this is the opposite of a system guy, right? Whenever a defender is within a step of the receiver. Purdy at the top at 0.27 EPA, expected points added per play. Then a massive, massive gap. Jalen Hurts is second. Then it's Trevor Lawrence. Then a little bit of a gap. Russell Wilson, Jared Goff. A little bit more of a gap. Dak Prescott and Josh Allen, followed by CJ Stroud. But only 8 quarterbacks in the entire league are positive efficiency quarterbacks when throwing into tight coverage. Only 8 in the league. Brock Purdy is one of those 8, and he is miles ahead of everyone else. So when Kyle Shanahan says, look at the MVP numbers, that's one of the things that he means. I think that it's simple. I talked about this earlier. You had Brock Purdy healthy for the most recent game against the Eagles. You didn't for the NFC Championship. You had Christian McCaffrey healthy for both. One of them, the 49ers got blown out in. One of them, the 49ers blew the Eagles out in. The one in which they blew the Eagles out, they had a healthy Brock Purdy. That is the variable. That's the variable of most value in the NFL. And it had nothing to do with whether or not Brock Purdy's a better player than Christian McCaffrey. It has everything to do with positional value and positional importance in the NFL. And that's the reason why the NFL MVP award almost always goes to a quarterback. Why don't we put the bird hunt graphic back on? And why don't we take a look at some of the other graphics that I have scoured the internet for you? This is a look at offensive tackle evaluation. So you got the difficulty of the pass block grade on the x-axis, and then you have the grade over expectation on the y-axis. You'll find Trent Williams amongst the good offensive tackles right here. The dotted line means if you're above it, then you're an above average offensive tackle. And Colton McKivitz down here in pass protection. Mike McGlinchey, a little bit better than Colton McKivitz, just to give you some perspective. What about wide receiver production? Look at this, Brandon Ayuk. 49ers are the upper right guys. Now you talk about, Christian McCaffrey and his potential competitor for Offensive Player of the Year, because I think that's the most likely way this will break. Somebody like Purdy for MVP, but Christian McCaffrey at Offensive Player of the Year. He's got competition at Tyreek Hill. Look how good Tyreek Hill has been amongst receivers. I'm at the very top right. So the yards per route run, way above everybody else. I've never seen anybody at 4 yards per route run. Normally, Brandon Ayuk would be at the top of the league, but he's not. It's Tyreek Hill instead. And then Tyreek Hill, the total EPA when targeted is added over 80 expected points, close to 90, better than even C.D. Lamb. Cool stuff. So is this. Fox put this up. Teams who have clinched, teams who are in the hunt. It looks like the 49ers are the only ones out of 32 teams who have clinched so far this season. So, 49ers key. Take it one game at a time. It's not worth getting into too many X's and O's details about the Cardinals. They blitz less than anybody in the league. Purdy torched them because of it, but Purdy's torching teams that blitz too. So it's pick your poison with Brock Purdy. They don't have much of a pass rush. They don't have much coverage. Budda Baker's the type of player that can disrupt things, though, so you've got to scheme around him. And offensively, Kyler Murray just hasn't been that good. James Conner is a big physical back, but Murray coming off the ACL. Kyle Shanahan warned the 49ers that he feels this Arizona team is like the 49ers down the stretch run in 2017 when Jimmy Garoppolo took over and they won 5 straight after starting 1-10. But the thing, and the big difference is that Jimmy Garoppolo was the number 1 ranked quarterback in football efficiency-wise over those 5 games in 2017. And Kyler Murray over 4 is ranked number 25. And generally, the strength of quarterback is going to determine what happens in the win-loss column on Sunday. And Kyler Murray is not at an elite level right now. He's not throwing the ball particularly well. He's not particularly explosive when he is completing passes. He can obviously run, and the 49ers will have to be ready for that. James Conner is obviously a physical back, but it'd be really hard to convince somebody that this Arizona team has enough of a load of firepower to compete with the 49ers, who I think almost certainly are going to score over 30 points against the bad Arizona Cardinals defense. Okay, Q&A, maybe a short one. Let's see. Let's wade into the comment section to see what everyone is saying. Montana and Brady were system guys too. Yes, guess what? Everyone is a system guy. Every quarterback is a system quarterback because guess what? Football is a system sport. Nobody's out there making up plays and drawing them on the dirt before they take the snap. Football is highly choreographed. Every team has an offensive coordinator because he coordinates the system, and the quarterback has to quarterback the system. Michael Otis is more worried about Trey McBride, the rising Cardinals tight end. Well, I mean, I think he's the one weapon that might scare you just because he's a bigger body. He can block. He can go on for a pass pattern. But to be honest, if the 49ers play their game and hold serve, they shouldn't be worried about anything. 49ers they're way more talented than Arizona. Somebody was saying Arizona should just be tanking. Oh, I'm not going to get into that, but this is not a game that the 49ers should lose. Purdy is not at fault for having talent around him. That is just a lazy, stupid take going around. Any quarterback who's ever done something in NFL history has had talent around him. It's a team sport. Appreciate you, Chris. I'm on the new iPhone right now, new camera, by the way. So I'm going to go play around with it a little bit to figure out all the new tricks I can do with it. Let me know if you notice something or if you think the video quality is good. Maybe it's the same. Who knows? But I'll try to keep on working on the lighting, do all that good stuff. Tirelessly working to make sure that you have your 49ers content. There's a lot of it today. So make sure you go into the locker room with me. It's on the channel. Go check out all those videos. Check out the practice footage of Jason Verrett, first practice back. And if you missed it, I was on the beach in LA yesterday. I'm obviously back in San Francisco now, but I was on the beach and did a whole 45-minute show from there. So go and look. Everybody have a good Wednesday night.